He be my protector. So far they go higher. Yo baby I need Pabeka. My God be my provider. He be my protector. So far they go higher. Oh yeah. Me nyawo biampo boni. I don't do them anything. People say me another day. If you wish me well, I wish you well. Me nyawo biampo boni. I don't do them anything. People say me another day. If you wish me well, I wish you well. Eva, Eva, I still dey fight for the paper. Of me now, no be later. No be later. Eva, Eva, I still dey fight for the paper. Of me now, no be later. Yeah. Nana nyami kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama. Nana nyami be kebi mama, kebi mama. Nana nyami kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama. Nana nyami be kebi mama. Yeah. Me nyawo biampo boni. I don't do them anything. People say me another day. If you wish me well, I wish you well. Me nyawo biampo boni. I don't do them anything. People say me another day. If you wish me well, I wish you well.
You munyai. Buti make it come and once I see I record with a stolen mic. Ubi see my phone coming here kasi na two men pie. Ubi banya moshe na mu destroy the soul inside. Mayebi ama na monkai.
Shame on you, I pray my God go favor you. What we dey do be deja vu. Omunya yanke fie jedu. Shame on you, I pray my God go favor you. What we dey do be deja vu. Omunya yanke fie jedu. Nana nyami kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama. Nana nyami be kebi mama, kebi mama. Nana nyami kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama, kebi mama. Nana nyami be kebi mama. Yeah. Me nyawo biampo boni. I don't do them anything. People say me another day. If you wish me well, I wish you well. Me nyawo biampo boni. I don't do them anything. People say me another day. If you wish me well, I wish you well. Eva, Eva, I still dey fight for the paper. Of me now, no be later. No be later. Eva, Eva, I still dey fight for the paper.
Welcome to the Fourth Branch program. Glad you can make it. I am MD. This program is dedicated exclusively for those with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a determination for a more perfect union. Stay tuned as we begin the discussion of a very important, interesting, and enlightening topic. Hope to hear from you soon. Happy listening. Hello everyone, I am MD and this is the Fourth Branch program. Welcome. Today is Wednesday, May 8th, and we begin this program by asking this puzzling question. How do you save a drowning man who believes he is a professional swimmer? We will continue with discussion about the race to 2020. Today we feature Joe Biden as the candidate vying for the nomination of the Democrat Party. We also take a look at why there is still a record deficit of leadership in the Republican Party. And today we begin a series reading the 448 pages of the Mueller's report in order to give a sense as to what that was all about. That and much more as we continue. I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program, inviting you to join me every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. and every weekday at 2 p.m. for discussions of social political issues and to dissect the meaning and the importance of current events as well as to understand topics of legislations. The Fourth Branch Project is not associated with any political party, and we at the Fourth Branch do not have any political agenda or aspiration. Our ultimate objective is to work towards achieving a more perfect union by removing ignorance, the biggest obstacle to our democracy. Stay with us. We will be right back. Today we will continue the conversation about featuring about a candidate vying for the nomination, the Democrat nomination, in order to take on Donald Trump. Today, Joe Biden is the individual. But before we get to that, we ought to talk about another important issue, which is a record deficit of leadership in the Republican Party. Yesterday, we watched Mitch McConnell on the Senate floor making a case to shut down the investigation that the Democrats' legislative branch have engaged into in order to exercise oversight over the executive branch. Now, for the past 2 years, I've been saying that the United States of America is in crisis. For the past couple of weeks, we can say in all certainty that the United States of America is in a constitutional crisis. And what I have been screaming at the top of my lungs is to say, let make sure that doesn't become a tragedy. First, I have to apologize to all those who have read my publication and all those who have been following this program for a very simple reason. Before Robert Mueller was appointed special counsel, that's almost 2 years now, I had by then already written 2 very lengthy articles in which I made a case that clearly showed Donald Trump was in collaboration with Russia. And notice I mentioned that Robert Mueller was not even appointed yet. So by the time I published the first article, I believe the title is Donald Trump collusion with Vladimir Putin is not a theory. Something that you can find on the peoplebranch.org. That is the website, one of the venues, I should say, where that particular article was published. It was also published on other media, but that place is where most of my publication, all of my publication actually are archived. So I strongly encourage you to visit that site. Now, so 2 years before the special counsel, I had already published 2 articles that clearly show there is some sort of collaboration, some sort of coordination between the Donald Trump camp and Russia. So by the time that the special counsel was appointed in order to look into that matter, I had already written dozens of articles. Now, the reason I ought to apologize to those who have read my publication and those who have listened to me talking about the state of affairs well before the Mueller report was released is the fact that I had naively believed, in fact before the 2018 midterm election, I had by then probably written a couple of articles in which I made the case that it did not matter at all whether Democrats won one or both houses. And the reason that I made that I wrote those articles is because I naively believe that the Republican legislators were patriots. Yes, you heard correctly. I naively believe that those Republican legislators in Washington are patriot first before they are Donald Trump lapdogs. I naively believe that because those articles, the point that I made, that I did not care as to who won the 2018 midterm election. And I genuinely believed that it did not matter whether Democrats or Republicans won. And the reason I felt that way is because I genuinely believe that Republican legislators would put the country first. So no matter what would happen, in fact that's the reason I gave them so much, I tolerated them so much during the first 2 years of Trump administration, because I believe that they were more concerned about keeping their job, and as soon as the 2018 midterm election would be over, then they would go back to legislating, they would go back to holding Donald Trump accountable. For that, I apologize to all those who have read my publication and to all those who have listened to what I said about the Republicans, because I did believe that they would have put the country first. And what we have seen beyond the 2018 midterm election is nothing short of individuals who seem to work for the Trump organization and who at any point at all turns, including now the Senate majority leaders standing in the middle of the Senate floor to make a case on behalf of Donald Trump. The idea of the legislative branch holding the executive branch accountable, as far as the Republicans are concerned, it does not matter. Now, if you tell a Republican that he's not patriot, now that person would curse you, would dance up and down and tell you that, yes, of course I'm a patriot. Well, let me tell you that the word patriot is not synonymous to citizenship. No, the word patriot is not a different word for citizen. A patriot is someone who would even give his life in order to defend the country, in order to defend the Constitution. For the past 2 years, we've seen the Republican legislators, all of them, literally lining up, lining down for Donald Trump to trample over the Constitution of the United States. Those individuals are not patriots. I've watched news media dancing around the issue and trying to sugarcoat what is currently going on. Our Constitution are being shredded not by just Donald Trump, but by the whole Republican Party. So when someone tells you that he is a patriot, it's either the individual, especially Republican, it's either that individual doesn't have any clue as to what a patriot is, or that individual is a complete idiot, or simply doesn't care about the country. Because I too fell in that particular category, the trap to believe that Republican would put the country, the Constitution first. And what a mistake I made. And again, I humbly apologize to all those who listened, who read what I wrote, and I also feel very ashamed by at the fact that I believe that Republicans were patriots. When the framers of the Constitution created this country, they set a structure, 3 equal branches of the government. And the legislative branch had the oversight over the executive branch. And the reason is to prevent what happened in England at that time from happening here. That means no single individual would be able to do anything he wants and not be held accountable. Now, despite the fact that the Republicans did not do the job, now they set in the way of Democrats doing that job, the oversight that the Constitution of the United States allowed them to do. If you are a patriot, you cannot not be outraged. Because this is not a matter of being Democrat or being Republican. Because the very reason that our democracy survives is because of that very structure of our government. The minute that you don't have any oversight, then at that point, the idea of democracy in the United States of America ceases to exist. So if you are a Republican and you think it's okay, then you too are no patriot. There is no other word of saying it. No matter what you hear people saying, trying to sugarcoat, trying to go around to explain it to you, that's all it means. If you are okay with what is currently going on with Donald Trump, with the Republican Party, you categorically are not a patriot. And no matter what you think of yourself, you are not a patriot. Because a patriot is someone who would give or who would make sacrifice sometimes of his or her own life, let alone sacrifice a political party in order to preserve the democracy, in order to preserve the Constitution, in order to preserve the rule of law. So if you cannot do that, Don't talk to anyone about being patriot, because you are no patriot. And what makes it even more sad is to see all the Republican legislators, they all lined up to provide rationale for their position. There are not that many ways to explain you're not a patriot. There is no gray area there. It's either you are a patriot or you are not. Especially legislators, they know what they're doing, how much damage it's doing to the Constitution, they in particular. Now, for the constituent, I've always been saying this, and I have not changed my mind about it, is the constituents are gullible, naive, and a lot of them are ignorant. But the legislators, those who know exactly what their action means for the country, for the Constitution, for the rule of law, those people, they simply not patriot, because they contribute to undermine, and they're doing it deliberately. Because what Mitch McConnell said in the Senate floor, Mitch McConnell is no stupid person. So what he did is actually very bad for the country, because he's dragging the constituent who are already gullible and naive to believe that what he said is actually true. That's the reason today we will begin to read the unredacted part of the Mueller's report, one page at a time, a couple of pages at a time, but we will start to begin to this process today. And for you to tell me, Tig, you see an investigation that ended, that number one, and number two, if indeed, even if you never went to college, even if you're not a genius, but at least what I'm about to say you can understand. If indeed the Mueller's report exonerated Donald Trump, if indeed Donald Trump believed there is nothing bad to find out about the Mueller's report, why is it that the whole Trump administration, apparatus, and the Republican Party, they all line up to prevent the unredacted report from being provided to Congress? They simply refuse to respond to any subpoena for document. You don't have to be a genius to see the writing on the wall. As I mentioned before, if someone knock at my door and they want to search my apartment, I don't have any problem with that. Now, granted, we're in a country of law, then there would be a reason for whoever is the concerned party to come into the apartment and search the apartment. Beyond that aspect, I don't care if I'm not here. Anyone can come. They can ransack the apartment, turn it upside down. And I know there is absolutely nothing to find. And the reason is because there is nothing to find. Now, the reason that the Trump administration and all the Republicans lined up to prevent any document, any individual from testifying, any document from being provided, is because it is as simple as there are so many things to hide. Now, the report had done a fantastic job providing a lot of evidence of wrongdoing. But the problem is, individuals in this country, constituents, do not read. They watch TV. They listen. So the only way for them, for those individuals, especially people in the Republican Party, in order for them to know what's in the report, they have to hear it from those same witnesses that gave those information to Robert Mueller. And that's what Donald Trump is fighting tooth and nail to prevent. But he's exonerated. There is nothing to see. But again, what makes it even worse is the fact that we have a legislative branch, Republican in the legislative branch, instead of doing the job for which they were elected, are the one preventing that job from being done. Now, as an American patriot, you should be very concerned. It shouldn't be fun to you. It shouldn't be funny to you, because it is not. Those same individuals, those very individuals that today are telling you there is nothing to see, the Mitch McConnell, the Lindsey Graham, the Chuck Grassley, all those people, they made a spectacle out of impeaching Bill Clinton because Bill Clinton had an affair with an intern. And it was the end of the world. Today, we have a president who had collaborated, most of the people around him had collaborated with a foreign government. And there is nothing to it as far as the Republicans are concerned. If you're not outraged, you may not live long enough to see the problem, but your children, your grandchildren will pay the price of what today the Republican Party is doing to our nation. They are working to erode the rule of law, to trash the Constitution. And they're not even doing it in hiding. Sometimes I even wonder, what exactly do the Republican constituents want? Do they want a country that becomes a banana republic, or do they want a country that their children can be proud of, to be a citizen of, to be a member of? Donald Trump is just a man, and at that, he is a crook, a liar. And the whole Republican Party wants to destroy the institution that we have to protect that individual. Don't you see the irony in this whole thing? We're not even talking about someone who deserves that kind of protection. Someone who has lied to the American people at every single opportunity that he has. He does that, and he makes certain that everyone around him lies. He had diminished the office of the presidency. He has used the presidency just for his own benefit. This is the individual we currently have in the Oval Office. And yet, all the Republican legislators are lining behind that individual to destroy the Constitution, to trample the rule of law. So the legislators do not care, and the constituents do not care. But they want you to know they are patriot, they are Christian, they are fiscally conservative. Well, those are great labels, but you are not living by those labels. Yes, they're lovely labels to use. So when you hear people in the media dancing around the issue, trying not to upset you, it's because of advertising money. Because they're afraid you leave them and go someplace else. But the reality is, the Republican legislators in Washington are accomplices in the destruction of our institution, in the erosion of our democracy, and in the trampling of our Constitution. So that cannot be something that any American patriot would like, no matter where you stand in the political spectrum. It doesn't matter to me whether you're a Democrat or Republican. If you see that your very legislators are destroying the Constitution, how could that be okay? As it is probably or should be obvious at this point, the 2020 presidential election, we cannot just see it as just another presidential election, because the soul of the country is in the balance. For the first time in the history of the United States of America, we have an individual in the Oval Office whose words mean absolutely nothing. He lies about everything that he says, everything that he does. And he gets everyone around him to lie. Everyone who works for the Trump administration lies about everything. That is unprecedented. And Trump himself, he just cannot not lie. But that's not the biggest problem. Is the fact that all those individuals who supported him, who voted for him, continue to listen to an individual whose words are the words of the devil, literally speaking. Isn't the Bible telling us that the devil is a liar? I even wonder sometimes if the devil lies as much as Donald Trump does. You are on the Fourth Branch program, the place for common sense. Today, as I mentioned at the top of the program, we will feature Joe Biden as the candidate, Democrat candidate vying for the office of the presidency. But before we do that, we will take a quick look at the second aspect of this program, which is we will read to you the first part. We will begin today by reading the letter that Robert Mueller sent to William Barr after releasing the report. As I mentioned earlier, today we begin the series by reading the report. Well, the redacted report, of course, because we currently don't have the unredacted report, and according to the news that came today, Donald Trump is exercising executive privilege over the report, a report that exonerates him. That's unfreaking believable. That we are heading towards one of the greatest tragedy in the history of this country, to have the executive branch blanket rejection of subpoena by the legislative branch, and you have members of a political party, the Republican Party, that completely stand in the way of the legislative branch doing that job. That is an unprecedented situation in the history of the United States. And yet it seems that people, especially in the Republican Party, are living their life as if everything is okay. Everything is not okay. We are in a constitutional crisis today. And if that is not resolved sooner rather than later, we will be heading towards the greatest tragedy this nation has known since its existence. First, we will take a quick look at the Robert Mueller letter to William Barr when we return. On March 25th, 2019, Robert Mueller sent a letter to William Barr. The background for the letter has to do with the fact that a couple of days prior, Robert Mueller released 2 volumes to the Department of Justice in regards to the investigation he was entrusted to do around the Russia interference in the 2016 presidential election. On Friday 23rd, March 23rd, or 24th, I'm no longer sure, Robert Mueller released the report to the Department of Justice. At that time, William Barr has already been confirmed and sworn in as the new Attorney General. 2 days later, William Barr released a 4-page letter on March 24th, in which he said, just giving you the gist of it, that Robert Mueller investigation found that Donald Trump was exonerated. I'm just paraphrasing here. There was no collusion and there was no obstruction. That was William Barr saying that, not Robert Mueller. And that letter was used by Donald Trump to claim total exoneration, no collusion, no obstruction. So on March 25th, just a day after, Robert Mueller sent a letter to William Barr to express his concern about his 4-page letter. And that's what we will be reading you now. And the reason that Robert Mueller sent that letter to William Barr is because William Barr completely, grossly mischaracterized the report. A report that has more, the first volume alone had 448 pages. And in a matter of 2 days, William Barr came to the conclusion that there was no collusion, no obstruction. Robert Mueller, who was silent during the whole process of the investigation, did not stay silent. Just a day after, he had a letter crafted to send to the Department of Justice. That tells you how annoyed Robert Mueller was with William Barr 4-page letter. Let's see what it says. Of course, it was sent using the Department of Justice stationery. It has the logo on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side it says U.S. Department of Justice, the Special Counsel's Office, Washington, D.C., 2530, that's a zip code, March 27. And on top of the letter, in handwriting, it looks like someone wrote that they received the letter on March 28. It says received, and it shows that it's written by hand, that's when the letter was received. Whether that's true or not, hey, totally irrelevant at this point. Honorable William P. Barr, Attorney General of the United States, Department of Justice, Washington, D.C. That's the letter written by Robert Mueller. Report of the Special Counsel, that's in reference to report of the Special Counsel on the investigation into Russia interference in the 2016 presidential election and obstruction of justice, in parentheses, March 2019. Dear Attorney General Barr, now I'm going to read to you exactly what's in the letter. I'm not adding or subtracting, I'm just reading the letter. Dear Attorney General Barr, I previously sent you a letter dated March 25th, 2019. In other words, that this letter that was sent on 27, it looks like there was a letter sent prior to that. I previously sent you a letter dated March 25th, 2019 that enclosed the introduction and executive summary for each volume of the special counsel's report, marked with redaction to remove any information that potentially could be protected by Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 6E that concern declination decision or that related to a charge case. We also had marked an additional 2 sentences for review, and I've now confirmed that these sentences can be released publicly. It continues. Accordingly, the enclosed documents are in a form that can be released to the public, consistent with legal requirement and department policies. I am requesting that you provide this material to Congress and authorize their public release at this time. As we stated in our meeting of March 5th and reiterated to the department early in the afternoon of March 24th, the introduction and the executive summaries of our 2-volume report accurately summarize this office work and conclusion. The summary letter the department sent to Congress and released to the public late in the afternoon of March 24 did not fully capture the context, nature, and substance of this office work and conclusion. We communicated that concern to the department on the morning of March 25th. There is now public confusion about critical aspects of the result of our investigation. This threatens to undermine a central purpose for which the department appointed the special counsel, to assure full public confidence in the outcome of the investigation. See Department of Justice press release May 17, 2017. While we understand that the department is reviewing the full report to determine what is appropriate for public release, a process that our office is working with you to complete, that process need not delay the release of the enclosed material. Release at this time would alleviate the misunderstanding that have arisen and would answer congressional and public questions about the nature and outcome of our investigation. It would also accord with the standard for public release of notification to Congress cited in your letter. See 28 CFR 609. The Attorney General may determine that public release of congressional notification would be in the public interest. Now, as of date, BAR has not even released the section of the report. That was the end of the report that says, sincerely yours, Robert S. Mueller III, Special Counsel. As of date, William Barr has not released the document Mr. Mueller made reference to in that letter. But they want you to think there is no problem, everything is fine and dandy, then everybody should go home. As it is probably or should be obvious at this point, the 2020 presidential election, we cannot just see it as just another presidential election, because the the soul of the country is in the balance. For the first time in the history of the United States of America, we have an individual in the Oval Office whose words mean absolutely nothing. He lies about everything that he says, everything that he does. And he gets everyone around him to lie. Everyone who works for the Trump administration lies about everything. That is unprecedented. And Trump himself, he just cannot not lie. But that's not the biggest problem. Is the fact that all those individuals who supported him, who voted for him, continue to listen to an individual whose words are the words of the devil, literally speaking. Isn't the Bible telling us that the devil is a liar? I even wonder sometimes if the devil lies as much as Donald Trump does. You are on the Fourth Branch program, the place for common sense. Next, we will talk about the featured candidate, Joe Biden, asking you to support him in order to clinch the nomination of the Democrat Party to take on Donald Trump in 2020 when we return. Donald Trump is wrong to call the media the enemy of the people. Throughout history, dictators, authoritarians have always tried to delegitimize the media in order to get away with corruption, scandal, and yes, even abuse. Adolf Hitler did exactly the same thing in 1933, accusing the media of fabrication. Journalists are not in the business of fairness. Our only business, is to be objective. It is our duty to hold Trump and every administration accountable. Today, it is urgent. It is necessary. It is critical. Our very freedom depends on it. So who is Joe Biden? Joe Biden is probably one of the few candidates who need no introduction. But for sake of keeping up with our program, with the template that we have established, so we will talk about Joe Biden, not just in terms of introducing him, but in terms of talking about Joe Biden's credential and what he wishes you to know about him in order to vote for him and help him clinch the nomination to take on Donald Trump. So who is he? Well, let's find out who Joe Biden is. First, you already know that Joe Biden was the Barack Obama vice president. Just recently, he was in the Oval Office when Obama second term ended in January of 2017. That was the last post that Joe Biden occupies. Now, prior to that, Joe Biden was the senator, a U.S. senator from the state of Delaware. He held that position from 1973 to 2009. That was a long time in Washington as a U.S. senator. Now, between 2007 and 2009, Joe Biden was the chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. So Joe Biden also was actually he had that position in a couple of occasions, if I'm not mistaken. And in 2001, actually from 2001 to 2003, Joe Biden was the chair of the International Narcotics Control Caucus. That's a tidbit of information that I wasn't really quite aware of. Now, between 2007 was the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Actually, the date is not quite right, but rather between 1987 to 1995, Joe Biden was the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Joe Biden was born Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., quite an interesting name. Robinette sounds like a French part of Joe Biden's name. In any case, Joe Biden was born Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. in November of 1942, which makes Joe Biden 76, is heading towards 77 in November. He was born in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Now, Joe Biden was not always Democrat. He was an independent between 1968 and 1969. And then from 1969, he became a Democrat. He joined the Democrat Party at the very least. Joe Biden was married to Nelia Hunter in 1966. But Nelia died in 1972. And he remarried in 1977 to Jill Jacobs, who is the current wife he's married to. They had 4 children together, and I believe one, Bo, died a few years ago. Joe Biden studied at the University of Delaware, where he obtained a bachelor degree. He continued his education at the Syracuse University, where he got a Juris Doctor degree. Pretty much a standard, at least for the Democrat Party, that it looks like 95% of the candidates, they all have a Juris Doctor degree in addition to whatever other field of interest that they went to college for. In 2008, Joe Biden received a gold Medal of Freedom. Well, actually in 2008, Joe Biden received a Hilai Pakistan, award, and in 2009 he received a gold medal of freedom. And in 2017 he received a presidential medal of freedom with distinction. I believe that particular one was given to him by his boss, Obama. As you can tell, before we even get to the point of calculating how long Mr. Biden has been in politics, pretty much a long time, like a very long time. Now, as we mentioned before, each one of those candidates we talk about, it's good to know what they have, what they're up to, and of course, but you, the constituent supporters who are interested in knowing about a particular candidate, the person's personal life may not be of such interest to you, but you want to know what that individual has to offer. Now, here are a few things that Biden seems to want to offer to you. First, he wants community college education to be free. Because, in fact, Biden is not the only one. There is a growing noise, if you like, in the Democrat Party that's calling for free education. You may recall that when Bernie Sanders came with the idea that in 2016, Hillary Clinton outright rejected that idea, said that's not feasible. Already in this country, there are 3 states that have officially adopted that very idea: New York, Washington State, and Massachusetts. Of course, the free education, for instance, in Massachusetts, if you go to school, I'm actually referring mostly for law here, because I'm not sure about if it applies to all the other aspects of education. But if you study law and you agree to provide public service to individuals who cannot afford an attorney, and you agree to do that for a period of 5 years in Massachusetts, then all debt will be erased. So in other words, in Massachusetts it's even sweeter in a sense, because you could decide to go to any college at all. You don't have to go necessarily to community college. You can go to any college, and when you graduate, if you decide you want to do that, meaning you want to provide service to individuals who cannot afford an attorney, then you would be qualified for your debt to be completely erased at the end of your 5th year. But to the matters at hand, Joe Biden wants free community college education. So does Bernie Sanders is also on board for that. I believe Elizabeth Warren is on board for that. So it is a growing, a loud noise being made on the Democrat side that college education should be free. Now, Joe Biden, of course, you recall being there with Obama in the passing of the signing of the Affordable Care Act, is open to actually, we call it revision if you like, because he wants to add to the Affordable Care Act. I'm not sure exactly what he has in mind, but he does want to expand it. Now, most of the other Democrats have adopted, that's including Bernie Sanders, who has been promoting the Medicare for all. You have Cory Booker, you have Kamala Harris, who seems to be on board with that. Now, Joe Biden didn't say anything about Medicare for all, but as a matter of fact, he has. I take that back. He supports the idea of Medicare for all. But it is my sense that based on the way he approached the whole healthcare idea, that he would continue to expand Obamacare. Now, Joe Biden is also very much for decriminalization of marijuana. Now, there is a slight difference between Joe Biden and all the others in this for this particular topic. Cory Booker, I believe, Bernie Sanders, I think Kamala Harris also may be on board with the idea of legalizing marijuana, but Joe Biden is not for that. He is more about decriminalization than legalization. In other words, he would not want the idea of holding an individual, labeling an individual a criminal for using drug, but he doesn't want to legalize it either. So I'm not sure the plan here, because Joe Biden believes that if marijuana becomes if the practice is legalized, he seems to think that it is a gateway drug, he calls it. So he is for decriminalization, but not legalization. Now, Joe Biden in 2015, he did put his name as someone who would want the federal minimum wage. In 2015, he wanted it to be $12 an hour, and according to his plan, that would gradually increase to $15 by 2020. But as you probably are already aware, that all the other candidates are already on board for a $15 minimum wage, and there are states and there are employers who are already paying their employees $15 an hour. So Joe Biden is pretty much lagging in this aspect. Joe Biden is also in favor of using both private and public funds to invest in federal infrastructure. He does believe that the United States of America is really in need of a massive commitment to rebuild our infrastructure. Joe Biden is also on board for climate change. He wants for the United States to be on board with renewable energy initiative instead of continuous reliance on oil and gas from the Middle East. Now, as we talk about each candidate, we present to you their big ideas. So what is Joe Biden's big idea? Well, Joe Biden wants to push the tech education, and he wants to increase the bargaining power for American workers, especially that would, in other words, if you read between the lines, in other words, he wants to strengthen the union, because that's really the organization, if you like, that advocates on behalf of the working and the middle class. So he wants to strengthen, to increase the bargaining power for American workers, as a solution for those who are working and middle class who are left behind. Now, contrary to Elizabeth Warren, contrary to Cory Booker, contrary to Bernie Sanders, who've already made a pledge not to take money from super PAC, from big donors, Joe Biden doesn't have any such problem. He wants to collect every single penny, no matter where it comes from. Now, for both people who take money from super PAC and those who don't, there is a lot to be said. Now, everybody can appreciate Bernie Sanders for trying to expand that idea, which is actually a noble idea, because the reason that we have the kind of problem that we have today in Washington is because all the elected officials, or most of them I should say, they belong to lobbyists, they belong to special interest groups, because those organizations, they give money, campaign money to those elected officials, so when they're in office, they want something in return. So by not taking money from those special interest groups, from those big donors, then an elected official would do what he or she was elected for, which is to attend to the affairs of the people. But that can only work if everybody is on board. And the reason I said that is because if you think about it, if millions of dollars from special interest groups, from big donors, and Democrats decide not to, they will be at a disadvantage, because despite what you hear, constituents always say they don't like the idea of mudslinging. Survey clearly shows, survey after survey, as long as we've been having presidential election, the individual who has, the candidates who have the most money to do the most mudslinging usually are the winners. So the idea that when you hear constituents telling you that they don't like the idea of people mudslinging the other candidate, they love it. They vote based on that. If indeed they didn't like it, then they would have made an example out of those people. And yet, survey after survey, presidential election after presidential election, clearly shows that the constituent always always vote for the candidate who has the most money to do the most mudslinging. So in other words, Democrats would be at a disadvantage if they decide not to accept money from big donors, from super PAC, while the Republicans' counterpart would be doing that. So that would not make any sense. So in a sense, it can only work if all sides decide to go the same route. So Joe Biden is not biting, is taking money wherever it comes from. Joe Biden has been in politics for 49 years. He is really, he and Bernie Sanders are the veteran in politics. Bernie Sanders has been in politics for quite some time too. Of course, he started in Vermont. He started in Vermont. We know that as a mayor, but we know that Bernie Sanders also has been out there for quite some time. In fact, Bernie Sanders has been in politics for 38 years. So Joe Biden beat Bernie Sanders by 11 years. Now, they both pretty much the same age. Bernie Sanders is now 77 years old. Joe Biden is 76 and will turn 77 in November. So the two oldest individuals in the campaign trail are the most experienced in politics. Now, if you were to go with the number of years in experience, then you would say that categorically that Joe Biden beat everybody else. Now, since Joe Biden jumped into the fray, he's been on the top spot. Now, you may recall before Joe Biden jumped in, it was Bernie Sanders who was considered the most favored candidate to win the Democrat nomination. And following Bernie Sanders, there were Kamala Harris, and there were Pete Buttigieg, and Cory Booker and Elizabeth Warren actually were still at the bottom. Now, Elizabeth Warren started to make some upward move because she's been pretty much setting a structure in place in order to see if she can win the nomination. Now, since Joe Biden jumped in, now Joe Biden has occupied the top spot. In fact, Joe Biden has sucked the oxygen out of everybody. Joe Biden, according to the last survey, to the last poll, Joe Biden was at 42%, I believe, 42%, and Bernie Sanders, who came second, was only at 14%, and Buttigieg was in third place at 8%. So Joe Biden has so far pretty much put an end, if you wish, to everybody's hope. But again, this is really the very early stage. We haven't even had the first debate yet, which will take place in Florida in June, at which point we will have a chance to see all of those candidates as to what they have to offer, how they respond, how they perform under pressure, and how they would try to differentiate themselves from the rest of the crowd. We will have our first glimpse as to how this whole thing will shape up. Now, there are rumors that Bill de Blasio is the mayor of New York City, thinking about jumping in as well. We currently have 21 candidates in the Democrat Party, and so far there is only one candidate officially one candidate in the Republican Party who wants to challenge Donald Trump is Bill Weld, who is the former governor from Massachusetts. Now, there is also the possibility that Stacey Abrams, who was vying for the governorship of Georgia, who also hinted at the idea that she might jump in. We don't know if she's going to do that, but at this point, that's where we're at. Now, until somebody else jump in into the ring, we today pretty much conclude the list of candidates vying for the nomination of the Democrat Party, and we will talk about Bill Weld. Of course, as I mentioned, we don't have any other official individuals who would challenge Donald Trump. There are rumors that John Kasich might. There are rumors that there is also an individual from the state of Maryland who is thinking about challenging Donald Trump, and there is even a possibility that Jeff Flake might challenge Donald Trump as well. In fact, Jeb Bush was suggesting exactly that a few weeks ago, because he thinks it is necessary for someone to challenge Donald Trump. Now, we don't know if there is going to be anybody else, but tomorrow we will approach Bill Weld and cover him as a candidate. And following that, be ready, be prepared, because we are performing small changes in this program, and it will come to you very shortly. We're trying to make it a little bit more succinct, a little bit more interesting, a little bit more diverse, more varied in terms of issues, in terms of topics that we cover. So hopefully you can continue to join us, because this program is, of course, to perfect the union. And this is where we discuss social, political issues through the prism of common sense. You are on the Fourth Branch program, the place for common sense. As it is probably or should be obvious at this point, the 2020 presidential election, we cannot just see it as just another presidential election, because the soul of the country is in the balance. For the first time in the history of the United States of America, we have an individual in the Oval Office whose words mean absolutely nothing. He lies about everything that he says, everything that he does. And he gets everyone around him to lie. Everyone who works for the Trump administration lies about everything. That is unprecedented. And Trump himself, he just cannot not lie. But that's not the biggest problem. Is the fact that all those individuals who supported him, who voted for him, continue to listen to an individual whose words are the words of the devil, literally speaking. Isn't the Bible telling us that the devil is a liar? I even wonder sometimes if the devil lies as much as Donald Trump does. I hope this program was of some use to you. If not, you already know what to do. Send us your comment, your suggestion, your criticism. Let us know how we're doing. In fact, let us know how we can make it better. In the meantime, should you have a particular topic you would like us to talk about, send it to us. We will research it. We will discuss it right here on the Fourth Branch program, the place for common sense. Tomorrow we will continue the conversation about the Mueller's report. Don't miss it. In the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. The Fourth Branch podcast is brought to you in collaboration with the People Branch publication, which can be found on the People Branch website, located at peoplebranch.org. That's people peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org website, in which you will find a number of very interesting articles. My name is Mike Duchesne, MD for short. I hope you have a great afternoon or a great evening, whichever it happens to be. Hopefully you can join me again next time for another interesting episode of this podcast. That was the Fourth Branch, live from New York. Good day.
kind of guy who will love you all over. And you're just the kind of girl who make love undercover. I'm just the kind of guy who will love you all over. And you're just the kind of girl who could watch me keel over. But I wanna be your number one. The tide is high, but I